Initiation of study to measure early signs of influenza through biosensor. Technology. Emeryville, Caliph, March 3, 2020 PR Newswire. Profusa, a digital health company that is pioneering the next generation of personalized medicine, today announced the initiation of a study that will use the company's minimally invasive injectable biosensor technology, the Lumi Oxygen platform, as a platform to potentially assist in the early detection of influenza outbreaks. The study is part of a collaboration with RTI International, a nonprofit research institute developing algorithms for illness detection, and research centers including Duke University and Imperial College London. The study, conducted at Imperial College London, will examine how sensors monitoring physiological status, prnewswire.com. The Lumi Oxygen platform, which measures tissue oxygen levels, provide potential indicators of human response to infection or exposure to disease in healthy volunteers. The goal of the study is to develop an early identification system to detect not only disease outbreaks, but biological attacks and pandemics up to 3 weeks earlier than current methods. The results of the study are anticipated to be available in 2021. This research marks an exciting step forward in the development of game-changing preventive care, said Ben Wong, Chairman and CEO of Profusa. The Lumi Oxygen platform can potentially function as a sort of canary in a coal mine for infectious disease, since subtle changes in oxygen at the tissue level may signal trouble and can help clinicians course correct quickly to avoid outbreaks. Changes in oxygen levels and other physiological measures, such as heart rate, as a result of a respiratory infection may assist researchers in the study to develop algorithms that can detect early, pre-symptomatic flu activity more quickly than what is currently possible. Despite the availability of antivirals and vaccines, influenza remains one of the greatest causes of illness and premature death worldwide. Seasonal influenza affects between 10% and 46% of the population each year, with mortality of up to approximately 12 deaths per 100,000 in developed countries. 1. During the 2009 H1N1 virus pandemic, many severe cases occurred in previously healthy young adults. With the entire worldwide population potentially at risk, the prevention and improved management of seasonal and pandemic influenza are of major importance. The potential significance of this new technology should not be underestimated, and Profusa is proud to be part of a joint effort funded by a DARPA, or Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, award, said Sean Gibbons, head of government business for Profusa. This is particularly exciting for Profusa as we look forward to leveraging learnings for future platform applications. Profusa's Lumi Patch, a wireless reader that adheres to the skin and collects and reports tissue oxygen levels sensed by the Lumi Oxygen sensor to a mobile device for real-time data visualization, will be used in the clinical study. The Lumi Patch and software being used in this study received approval as an investigational device from Medicines and Healthcare Products Regulatory Agency, MHRA, in the UK, to be used in conjunction with other devices. The injectable Lumi Oxygen The injectable Lumi Oxygen sensor and injector Lumi Pen being used in this study are CE marked for use in the European Union and EEA. The project is part of DARPA's Sigma Plus program in the Defense Sciences Office, DSO. About Profusa. Based in Emeryville, Caliph, Profusa is a digital health company led by visionary scientific founders, an experienced management team and a world-class board of directors who share the long-term goal of improving health and well-being for patients worldwide. With its long-lasting, injectable and affordable biosensors and its intelligent data platform, Profusa aims to provide people with a personalized biochemical signature rooted in data that clinicians trust and rely upon. These data may allow people to act as an active and educated participant alongside their care team and understand how their choices and decisions impact health and well-being, day in and day out. LUMEE, Profusa, and the PROFUSA logo are registered trademarks of Profusa Inc. in the United States, Canada, European Union, China, Japan, South Korea and Australia. For more information, visit https://profusa.com. About the Lumi Oxygen platform. Profusa's first clinical offering, the Lumi Oxygen platform, and the next generation wireless Lumi Oxygen platform, which are CE marked for use in the European Union, are indicated for use in patients with potential acute and/or chronic changes in tissue oxygen levels who may benefit from monitoring. The Lumi Oxygen sensor provides continuous and long-term monitoring of the oxygen in subcutaneous tissue. After a single injection, measurement thereafter is obtained non-invasively using an optical reader. In contrast to external pulse oximeters, which measure oxygen bound to the hemoglobin in larger blood vessels, the Lumi Oxygen platform measures dissolved oxygen at the tissue level in the fluid that bathes cells. About DARPA Sigma Plus. The DARPA Sigma Plus program aims to expand Sigma's advanced capability to detect illicit radioactive and nuclear materials by developing new sensors and networks that would alert authorities to chemical, biological, and explosives threats as well. Sigma Plus calls for the development of highly sensitive detectors and advanced intelligence analytics to detect minute traces of various substances related to weapons of mass destruction, WMD threats. Sigma Plus will use a common network infrastructure and mobile sensing strategy, a concept that was proven effective in the Sigma program. The Sigma Plus chemical, biological, radiological, nuclear and high-yield explosive, CBRNE, detection network would be scalable to cover a major metropolitan city and its surrounding region. Planned execution of Sigma Plus will occur in 2 phases. Phase 1 will focus on developing novel sensors for chemicals, explosives and biological agents, while Phase 2 will focus on network development, analytics and integration. Disclaimer. Funding from the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, DARPA. The views, opinions and/or findings expressed are those of the author and should not be interpreted as representing the official views or policies of the Department of Defense or the U.S. government. Contact Sylvia Aranda. W2O Pure. Saranda at purecommunications.com. Juan Monto, A. S. Epidemiology of Influenza. Vaccine 26. Supple 4, D45 to 48. Source Profusa, Inc. Related links. http www.profusa.com. Memorandum. 2. Select Subcommittee on the Coronavirus Pandemic Members. From Select Subcommittee on the Coronavirus Pandemic Majority Staff. Date, March 5, 2023. New evidence resulting from the Select Subcommittee's investigation into the origins of COVID-19, the proximal origin of SARS-CoV-2. On February 1, 2020, Drive. Anthony Fauci, Drive. Francis Collins, and at least 11 other scientists convened a conference call to discuss COVID-19. It was on this conference call that Drs. Fauci and Collins were first warned that COVID-19 may have leaked from a lab in Wuhan, China and, further, may have been intentionally genetically manipulated. Point 2. Only 3 days later, on February 4, 2020, 4 participants of the conference call authored a paper entitled The Proximal Origin of SARS-CoV-2 Inches, Proximal Origin, and sent a draft to Drs. Fauci and Collins. Point 3. Prior to final publication in Nature Medicine, the paper was sent to Dr. Fauci for editing and approval. Point 4. On April 16, 2020, slightly more than 2 months after the original conference call, Drive. Collins emailed Drive. Fauci expressing dismay that proximal origin, which they saw prior to publication and were given the opportunity to edit, did not squash the lab leak hypothesis, and asks if the NIH can do more to put down the lab leak hypothesis. Point 5. The next day after Dr. Collins explicitly asked for more public pressure. Drive. Fauci cited proximal origin from the White House podium when asked if COVID-19 leaked from a lab. Point 6. New evidence released by the Select Subcommittee today suggests that Dr. Fauci prompted the drafting of a publication that would disprove the lab leak theory. The authors of this paper skewed available evidence to achieve that goal, and Dr. Jeremy Farrar went uncredited despite significant involvement. One email from Jeremy Farrar to Anthony Fauci et al. Feb. 1, 2020, on file with Com. Staff. 2 letter from Hun. James Comer, Ranking Member, H. Com. on Oversight and Reform, and Hun. Jim Jordan. Ranking Member, H. Com. on the Judiciary, to Hun. Xavier Becerra, Secchi, U.S. Deputy of Health and Human Services. Jan. 11, 2022. 3 email from Jeremy Farrar to Anthony Fauci and Francis Collins, Feb. 4, 2020, on file with Com. Staff. 4 email from Christian Anderson to Anthony Fauci, Francis Collins, and Jeremy Farrar, Mar. 6, 2020, on file with Com. Staff. 5 email from Francis Collins to Anthony Fauci et al. April 16, 2020, on file with Com. Staff. 6 John Haltewinger, Drive. Fauci throws cold water on conspiracy theory that coronavirus was created in a Chinese lab, Bloomberg, April 18, 2020. Page 1 of 7. New evidence. The drafting and publication of The Proximal Origins of SARS-CoV-2. I. Prompted by Tony Fauci. The evidence available to the Select Subcommittee suggests that Dr. Anthony Fauci prompted Drive Christian Anderson, Professor, Scripps Research, Scripps, to write Proximal Origin, and that the goal was to disprove any lab leak theory. On August 18, 2021, Scripps responded to then Committee on Oversight and Reform Ranking Member James Comer and then Committee on the Judiciary Ranking Member Jim Jordan's July 29, 2021, letter to Dr. Anderson. Point 7 in this letter, Scripps asserts that Dr. Anderson objectively investigated the origins and that Dr. Anthony Fauci did not attempt to influence his work. Point 8. Both statements do not appear to be supported by the available evidence. The goal of Proximal Origin was to disprove a lab theory. In Scripps' August 18 letter on behalf of Dr. Anderson, it stated, in January 2020, Drive Anderson began investigating the origins of SARS-CoV-2. At every point, Drive Anderson has objectively weighed all of the evidence available to him. Dr. Anderson's view evolved consistent with the evidence at his disposal. Scientists must make conclusions supported by the available evidence, even when it conflicts with earlier assessments. Point 9. According to previously released emails, this assertion is also demonstrably false. On February 8, 2020, Drive Anderson stated, our main work over the last couple of weeks has been focused on trying to disprove any type of lab theory. 10. This email directly contradicts Scripps' earlier statement that Dr. Anderson objectively weighed all the evidence regarding the origins of COVID-19. Instead, it appears that Dr. Anderson was given direction and sought to formulate a paper, regardless of available evidence, that would disprove a lab leak. 7. Letter from Hun. James Comer, Ranking Member, H. Com. on Oversight and Reform, and Hun. Jim Jordan, Ranking Member, H. Com. on the Judiciary, to Christian Anderson, Professor, Scripps Research. 8. Letter from Counsel for Scripps Research to Hun. James Comer, Ranking Member, H. Com. on Oversight and Reform, and Hun. Jim Jordan, Ranking Member, H. Com. on the Judiciary, emphasis added. 9. ID, emphasis added. 10. Email from Christian Anderson, Professor, Scripps Research, to Christian Drosten, et al., Professor, German. Sent. For infection research, emphasis added. Page 2 of 7. Dr. Anthony Fauci prompted the drafting of The Proximal Origin of SARS-CoV-2. In Scripps' August 18 letter on behalf of Dr. Anderson, it stated, as for the conference call of February 1, Drive Fauci did not, in Dr. Anderson's view, attempt to influence Drive Anderson or any other member of the ad hoc working group of international subject matter experts with respect to any aspect of the discussion. Point 11. According to new evidence obtained by the Select Subcommittee, this assertion is demonstrably false. On February 12, 2020, Drive Anderson wrote to Nature to request the publication of what would become Proximal Origin. In this email, Drive Anderson wrote, there has been a lot of speculation, fear-mongering, and conspiracies put forward in this space, and we thought that bringing some clarity to this discussion might be of interest to Nature. Sick. Prompted by Jeremy Farah, Sick, Tony Fauci, and Francis Collins, Eddie Holmes, Andrew Rambo, Bob Gary, Ian Lipkin, and myself have been working through much of the primarily genetic data to provide agnostic and scientifically informed hypothesis around the origins of the virus. Point 12. This email directly contradicts Scripps' earlier statement that Dr. Fauci did not influence Dr. Anderson. 2. The false narrative of the pangolin sequences. It remains unclear what science changed or new evidence was discovered to change the minds of the authors of Proximal Origin between the February 1 conference call and the February 4 draft. In a July 14, 2021 interview with the New York Times, Drive Anderson was asked about how his view changed from possible lab leak to definitely zoonotic. C and U. Explain how the research changed your view. He replied, The features in SARS-CoV-2 that initially suggested possible engineering were identified in related coronaviruses, meaning that features that initially looked unusual to us weren't, yet more extensive analyses, significant additional data and thorough investigations to compare genetic diversity more broadly across coronaviruses led to the peer-reviewed study published in Nature Medicine, Sick. For example, we looked at data from coronaviruses found in other species, such as bats and pangolins. 11 letter from Council for Scripps Research, Supernote 8, emphasis added. 12 email from Christian Anderson, Professor, Scripps Research, to Claire Thomas, Team Manager, Nature, Feb. 12. 2020, emphasis added, on file with Select Subcom staff. Page 3 of 7, which demonstrated that the features that first appeared unique to SARS-CoV-2 were in fact found in other, related viruses. 13. According to new evidence obtained by the Select Subcommittee, while proximal origin was going through peer review with Nature Medicine more than a year earlier, Drive. Anderson actually did not find the pangolin data compelling. The first referee asked, "There are 2 recent reports about coronaviruses in pangolins. The authors might want to comment on these. 14. Dr. Anderson replied, "We have included these references as well as several others that have investigated pangolin CoV. In addition, we should point out that these additional pangolin CoV sequences do not further clarify the different scenarios discussed in our manuscript. There is nothing in these reports that changes our statements regarding a potential role of pangolins. 15. The second referee asked, "The paper itself is interesting, but unnecessarily speculative. It's not clear why the authors do not refute a hypothetical lab origin in their coming publication on the ancestors of SARS-CoV-2 in bats and pangolins. Once the authors publish their new pangolin sequences, a lab origin will be extremely unlikely. It is not clear why the authors rush with a speculative perspective if their central hypothesis can be supported by their own data. Please explain. 16. Dr. Anderson replied, "Our manuscript is written to explore the potential origin of SARS-CoV-2. We do not believe it is speculative. Unfortunately, the newly available pangolin sequences do not elucidate the origin of SARS-CoV-2 or refute a lab origin. Hence, the reviewer is incorrect on this point. Here is no evidence on present data." 13. James Gorman and Carl Zimmer, scientist, opens up about his early email to Fauci on virus origins, the NY Times, emphasis added. 14. Referee number 1 document, Feb. 21, 2020, on file with Select Subcom staff. 15. ID, emphasis added. 16. Referee number 2 document, Feb. 21, 2020, on file with Select Subcom staff. Page 4 of 7. That the pangolin CoVs are directly related to the COVID-19 epidemic. 17. Privately, Drive. Anderson did not believe the pangolin data disproved a lab leak theory. Despite saying so publicly, it is still unclear what intervening event changed the minds of the authors of proximal origin in such a short period of time. Based on this new evidence, the pangolin data was not the compelling factor. To this day, the only known intervening event was the February 1 conference call with Dr. Fauci. 3. Uncredited involvement of Dr. Jeremy Farrar. The evidence available to the Select Subcommittee suggests that Dr. Farrar, the former director of the Wellcome Trust and current chief scientist at the World Health Organization, was more involved in the drafting and publication of proximal original than previously known. Dr. Eddie Holmes sought permission from Dr. Farrar to involve Drive. W. Ian Lipkin. Dr. Lipkin, professor of epidemiology, Columbia University, was not on the February 1 conference call and was not involved in the drafting of proximal origin in the early stages. However, on February 10, 2020, Drive. Holmes sent a draft of proximal origin to Dr. Lipkin for his review. Dr. Holmes stated, "Here's the document we wrote a few days ago. Things are moving so quickly that it's hard, sick, to keep up. Comments welcome. I Favor natural evolution myself, but the furin cleavage site is an issue. I'll have a chat with Jeremy Farrar in a little while to see if can get you more directly involved. 18. Dr. Lipkin responded with his thoughts on the draft of Proximal Origin. It's well reasoned and provides a plausible argument against genetic engineering. It does not eliminate the possibility of inadvertent release following adaptation through selection in culture at the Institute in Wuhan. Given the scale of the bat CoV research pursued there and the site of emergence of the first human cases, we have a nightmare of circumstantial evidence to assess. 19. Dr. Holmes agreed with Dr. Lipkin's assessment of the possibility of a lab leak and reiterated that he was asking Drive Farrar about including Drive Lipkin in the drafting process. 17 ID emphasis added. 18 email from Edward Holmes, Professor, University of Sydney, to W. Ian Lipkin, Professor, University of Columbia, emphasis added, on file with Select Subcom staff. 19 email from W. Ian Lipkin, Professor, University of Columbia, to Edward Holmes, Professor, University of Sydney, emphasis added, on file with Select Subcom staff. Page 5 of 7. I agree. Talking to Jeremy Farrar in a few minutes and I'll get back in touch after. It is indeed striking that this virus is so closely related to SARS yet is behaving so differently. Seems to have been pre-adapted for human spread since the get-go. It's the epidemiology that I find most worrying. 20. Dr. Farrar led the drafting process and made at least one uncredited direct edit to Proximal Origin. Dr. Farrar is not credited as having any involvement in the drafting and publication of Proximal Origin. According to new evidence obtained by the Select Subcommittee, Drive Farrar led the drafting process and in fact made direct edits to the substance of the publication. Right before publication, on February 17, 2020, Drive Lipkin emails Drive Farrar to thank him for leading the process of drafting Proximal Origin. Thanks for shepherding this paper. Rumors of bioweaponeering are now circulating in China. 21. Dr. Farrar responds, confirming and saying that he will pressure Nature to publish. Yes, I know, and in US, why so keen to get out ASAP? I will push Nature. 22. In addition to leading the drafting and publication process, Drive Farrar made at least one direct edit to Proximal Origin. On February 17, 2020, the day Proximal Origin was first published publicly, Drive Farrar made an edit to the draft. Sorry to micromanage microedit. But would you be willing to change one sentence? From it is unlikely that SARS-CoV-2 emerged through laboratory manipulation of an existing SARS-related coronavirus. 2. It is improbable that SARS-CoV-2 emerged through laboratory manipulation of an existing SARS-related coronavirus. 23. 20 email from Edward Holmes, Professor, University of Sydney, to W. Ian Lipkin, Professor, Columbia University. February 10, 2020, emphasis added, on file with Select Subcom staff. 21 email from W. Ian Lipkin, Professor, Columbia University, to Jeremy Farrar, Der, Wellcome Trust, Feb. 17. 2020, emphasis added, on file with Select Subcom staff. 22 email from Jeremy Farrar, Der, Wellcome Trust, to W. Ian Lipkin, Professor, Columbia University, Feb. 17. 2020, emphasis added, on file with Select Subcom staff. Page 6 of 7. To which, Dr. Anderson responds. Sure, attached. 24. This evidence suggests that Dr. Farrar was more involved in the drafting and publication of Proximal Origin than previously known and possibly should have been credited or acknowledged for this involvement. 23 email from Jeremy Farrar, Der, Wellcome Trust, to Christian Anderson, et al., Professor, Scripps Research, Feb. 17, 2020, on file with Select Subcom staff. 24 email from Christian Anderson, Professor, Scripps Research, to Jeremy Farrar, Der, Wellcome Trust, Feb. 17. 2020, on file with Select Subcom staff. Page 7 of 7. 450. Category. Second, technical innovation in depth. Third, consistency with HERT program concepts. Fourth, personnel and corporate capabilities and experience. Government. Cost realism and value of proposed work to the HERT 6. 0405. 3LL 100%. See problem statement. The future of warfare lies in the streets, sewers, high-rise buildings, industrial parks, and the broken cities of our world. We, the sprawl of houses, shacks, and shelters that form, will fight elsewhere, but not so often, rarely as reluctantly, and never so brutally. Ralph Peters. Fifth. BAA. C1. The difficulty of MOUT operations. Clock neurons gate memory extinction in Drosophila. Graphical abstract. Highlights.
We'll come back to that. If you notice in the origins of the paroxysmal origins of COVID sheet, you've got Farrar, you've got Fauci, you've got Collins, and you've got Dr. Ian. So right there, you've already got the Wellcome Trust, you've got the NIAID, you've got the NIH, and you've got the director of Columbia University. Plus, Farrar, he headed up the Wellcome Trust. He was on the World Health Organization's committee, and it was either him, Ian, or I forget the other one that was running Pirbright, the Pirbright Institute, the ones that had the joint patent between foot and mouth disease, H1N1, IBV, COVID, which is it's a intestinal bronchial virus. And if you go through all that and you look, who's the joint owners of that? DEFRA, DARPA, Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, the Wellcome Trust, the Working Group, Great Britain, and I'm pretty sure that has it, DARPA. But when you go through it and it says, well, we can't find a reason, we can't seem to understand why Farrar or why this Ian Fleming or whatever is it, why it keeps getting sent to them or and we can't figure out why Wellcome, why they would get anything or what their whole point in getting involved in this is. It's not real hard at all. I mean, considering they were all involved in the joint research, they all had patents. The only two that didn't have patents that went out for that is, well, Gates had the one through Pirbright and DARPA and everybody else, and number two, the CDC had the other one. And then NIAID or whoever had it, one of them had it. Because right now, if you look, Moderna just paid, earlier in the year, they just paid almost $500 million in kickbacks. I call it kickbacks. You can call it contract, however you want. Tax money paid for a patent that they own, that they offered Pfizer and Moderna patent rights on both. Pfizer, I think, decided, well, we're going to go ahead and just buy these patent rights or take these patent rights. Moderna is like, we'll pay. That's why for every shot that Moderna gives, period, a kickback goes to the USAID. It's very, very messed up. Texas is getting ready to file suit, unless they haven't already filed suit against Pfizer. They left Moderna off, but it has to do with those patents. And if you go to a company, you can just look it up. Go to Afrigen, AFRIGEN, reverse engineers Moderna's jab with help from World Health Organization. Because Moderna wouldn't give them the information, calling it proprietary rights, which they didn't own the proprietary rights anyway to that part of it. That went back to the CDC or whoever had the ownership rights. So the World Health Organization actually got together money and got together this group over in Africa, Afrigen, this company, and had them reverse engineer the Moderna vaccine. Because Moderna wouldn't give them the information based on proprietary secrets. So they got it done. It wasn't supposed to be quite as good. I mean, I don't know what that means, considering I don't know that any of them are were great. I mean, how many are people going on now? 29. I'm being facetious, but give me a break. It's about what it is. Gates was on TV calling for wanting 7 to 10 a year early on in it. Fauci was calling for 6 to 9 a year. There's still a whole bunch involved with this that let's not all forget yet. I know we have a freaking genocide going on. We have the United States kowtowing to Israel, letting them do anything they want. It's the same thing when we went over there and gave them the nuclear subs when Australia was treating their citizenry so terribly. I mean, just sovereignty. They were treating them worse than any country that I could see. And so what did Joe Biden do when he made a trip and a flyby there? He agreed to. It wasn't to assure the Australian people that he was going to make sure that their solidarity and everything was going to be kept up and that we had their back. It was to give them 10 nuclear subs. Which then, if you look on Fox had a story and it said that pissed the French off because the French wanted to sell them the subs, so they canceled. No joke, this is going to sound retarded. So they canceled the Gala ball because they had a ball set up between France and the United States DOD. So they canceled the Gala. But see, France was the ones bitching the loudest whenever Russia went and made the move on February 24th, 2022. But they've been getting shipment after shipment of uranium. And somehow backdoored through, I don't know who it is, India or Egypt or whatever, they're all getting the oil from the blown up pipelines, even though that was, I mean, just like this is a war crime and a crime against humanity, what Israel is doing. And the same token, what the hell is it when you go and you blow up 2 pipelines that are going to NATO countries? What are you doing to their people? I don't know what else to say. This is all such a mess. Nonviolent, just saying no. Now there is a time that if they come out, they start killing your family and killing people and everything else. Of course, you get left no. But I guarantee you that there's millions upon millions of vets, and none of them want to see a revolution. None of them are wanting to try to take a takedown. They'd like to see, I'm sure, a change of the guard at the top. But hopefully, straight elections, and this will do this before the United States gets to be seen as the people that backed a major genocide across the entire world. You can go to my channel and you can go 3 days before they walked in there. I'm not saying I knew that was going to happen at all, because I did not. But just the same as January 6th, I thought something was going to happen that day. I had told my brother, and on that day. I'd been getting worked up. I didn't know it was going to happen that day at all, but everything was pointing to something was going to happen that day. Now we know, a chilling effect. I don't get it. This has more to do with any R for Republican or D for Democrat or I for Independent. This has to do with H for human. And right now, we seem to be the only ones behind the UK, which happens to back us up sometimes when we need it. And now look what's going on. Benjamin Netanyahu is telling the United States to get fucked. They're asking for billions and billions of dollars. We're feeding them weapons beyond belief. And not one word. Not one word said about anything. But if you go down through my channel list, there's Kamala Harris. And I want you to know that Russia has committed war crimes and that anybody that's done that by their name or has been involved or held their back, well, I hope she's got a memory and remembers what she says. It's one thing to act in the moment and act out of vengeance. It's another thing to act to try to create an entire killing of an entire class, religion, people's strip of land. I'm not going to be the one. Biden can be the one to call it genocide. I'm not the one to put numbers on this. One person, that's enough to see me get killed if it's somebody you love. Yourself, if you don't love anybody else even. Two people, what, a double homicide, double murder? Three people, triple homicide, getting up on multiple murder? Then what, you got 4 or 5? What number does it take to become serial or mass murder? Then what number does it become up to where it just becomes a genocide? Is there a number to that? Does anybody want to put a number to that? No matter which party we're from, what's going on right now is completely wrong. Everybody knows it. If the people in this country don't know it, then there's a problem with that already in itself. To let the heads of our country go on in our names, citizens, they're citizens, we're citizens, in our names, to sit out at the end of the Red Sea or any of that and to pretty much just be like, come on, we dare you, come on in. They're going to be blowing up hospitals. I mean, anything you could think of, genocide. No food, that's genocide. No water, that's genocide. No medical supplies, that's genocide. Netanyahu is saying, oh, remember, from the river to the sea. Well, they were screaming, oh, that's genocidal by the Palestinians. All of Israel's freaking government is saying this shit. I hope everybody remembers this all too well, because when it ends up in a neighborhood near us, you're going to get up to go to work one day and there's going to be Hellfire missiles, or I don't know, is it going to matter? Hellfire, JDAM, Cruise, Tomahawk. It's always kind of ridiculous to me how, well, you can use this and that to blow somebody into a million pieces, but not this and this and this. Makes sense to me to not create infinite suffering, but when you tell everybody from the north to go south, and you drop leaflets giving people 24 hours to get somewhere, and then within the 24 hours you've done blown up every border, plus you've got the coastline cut off there. America and everybody else has got that. So as soon as they started moving, you blew up wherever they were going. And then you put bombs in and where? Lebanon, bombs in Egypt, bombs in Syria, bombs. I don't know who they're trying to fool, or not to be. Well, I am going to be that way. Not to be a freak here, but I don't know what Benjamin and Biden do when they get in rooms together and talk. But all this, oh, he's got my picture on his desk, and he said, well, so what? We're going on 40 or 50,000 people being killed, and it's not stopped. And we're not saying a freaking word. But Kamala Harris, go down and look through my list. She's on there. And I will say that Russia has committed war crimes, and that any people better look up the word war crimes or crimes against humanity, because they've happened right here in the United States, left and right also. Unit 731, take a gander at that even before Hitler. And you read that and you tell me the implications behind that, and you tell me that there is not some kind of problem here. What do we have our kids say? United we stand, divided we fall. They know that. Does it look like they're trying to divide or unite?